You've got big projects to tackle, but your day gets swallowed up by repetitive tasks and constant inquiries. It's hard to make progress when you're stuck putting out fires. That's where Element 451's AI assistants come in. Acting like an extra set of hands, you get your time back for the high-impact projects. Ready to reclaim your time? Visit element451.com/AI team to learn more.
Talent acquisition, that's it. That's the tweet, as it were. This episode of I Want to Work There, we are going to focus on three things. One, how colleges and universities can get past the practice of post and pray to find the kind of talent that they really want. Also, we are going to talk about common talent acquisition and attraction mistakes that colleges and universities make. And finally, we are going to find out how colleges and universities can recruit on a budget. And we're going to do it with a veteran recruiter, a friend of mine, my mentor, as a matter of fact, in talent acquisition. Her name is Lesley Regalado. And don't forget to like this episode, share it, and please rate the podcast. All right, let's get into it. Let's get into this episode of I Want to Work There. Welcome to I Want to Work There, a podcast that helps colleges and universities boost their brand as employers of choice. I'm your host, Eddie Francis, brand strategy consultant for Edify Ventures. Join me every other week for discussions with some of the best minds in talent recruitment and retention, human resources, and marketing and communications inside and outside of higher education. I Want to Work There is part of the Enrollify Network, a robust collection of podcasts designed to help higher education professionals just like you grow, and explore our other shows at enrollify.org, or check out some of my personal favorites linked in the show notes below. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered all-in-one student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com. Thank you so much for joining me on I Want to Work There. Joining me is someone I've had the pleasure of knowing for quite some time. Her name is Lesley Regalado. She is the founder and principal consultant for Career Resource Services. She's also an associate clinical professor in the College of Business at the University of Texas at Arlington. A new title. Regalado, congratulations on your new assignment as a professor, an associate professor.
Thank you. I'm really excited about it. Long time coming. Lot of preparation. This has been years in the making, but I'm so excited to be working at UTA.
Yeah. So let me give just a really quick 30-second background for the audience. So I have told this audience about my experiences in recruiting and how I've had this really cool mix of recruiting and marketing and PR experience. Well, the woman who I'm talking to right now, Dr. Lesley Regalado, is the one who actually mentored me into recruiting. No, scratch that. She tricked me into recruiting. But no, she gave me the great opportunity to pivot into recruiting, and I have loved it ever since I've done it. And you can say that she is a big part of the reason I'm even doing this podcast about employer branding and higher education. And so, Lesley, it's great to have you. It's an honor to have you. And so let's start with your extensive experience in talent acquisitions. And part of your experience has been doing TA when it comes to higher education. So let's start here. When institutions are looking for talent, how can they approach the process strategically instead of doing our favorite thing, post and pray? How can they approach it strategically?
I really think that the key to good recruiting is networking. You've got to be well networked. You've got to, what do I always say? You've got to fish in the pond where the fish are that you want to catch. You can't just post and pray. I mean, that's recruiting 101. You need to post, for advertising purposes to get the word out, but you've got to be more creative and you've got to go where the talent are. You can't wait for it to come to you. I have always thought that, referrals and networking were just the best way to find good talent. It's the best way to bring more diversity in to pools. And some people might say, well, that's not true, Lesley, when you like recruits like. And in some ways that's true. But I think in some situations, that's a good thing, because maybe when you find pockets of people who are not fully represented in a particular field, those people know other people like them. And so I've always felt like that's a great way to recruit and bring people in. So just, community partnerships, industry relationships, these are various ways you can look for talent. Those are definitely my go-to and my thoughts around bringing great people into higher ed, particularly.
In higher ed, I mean, people are always at conferences at higher ed. So seems like making use of that conference time also, right?
It's so easy to network in higher ed. I mean, like, now that I'm shifting, into this new role at UT Arlington, I'm super excited because it is all about who you know. And I think one of my strengths has always been a strong network. It's always been that ability to walk into a room and sit next to somebody and have lunch and, hey, how are you? I'm Lesley. Nice to meet you. Tell me about yourself. And just sort of, learn their story and grow your network. And I'm excited about that, to again, just grow more of a network specifically in higher ed. I mean, I think because I've always owned a talent business, my network has been diverse, and this will be something new, but really excited about it.
So tell me how this hit you, because, we've had folks who have felt a little better about applications that they've been getting at colleges and universities, because you've had job applications dip since COVID, obviously. And there are folks who are still looking at the talent crisis in higher ed. I bring this up all the time, that Coupa HR, in their annual employee satisfaction or annual employee retention survey, they cited that 61% of the respondents said that they want to leave higher ed altogether. And for you and me, that's a scary number. That's not a number you want to hear.
Right.
And so when people look at the applicant pool that they have, and they say, well, hey, you know what? Last year was a dip. We had 30 applicants, but this year we have about 70 applicants. My immediate reaction to that is, that's good to know, but let me ask you a question. Do you like those applications? And so do you think that's a fair question when people say, hey, no, our applications are picking back up?
People don't understand that when they are applying for positions, for a job that they're interested in, there's got to be some connection. Very rarely is someone just going to pull an application out of an applicant tracking system, not knowing the person, and just go, I'm just going to call this person randomly, when there's no synergy, there's no transferable skills, there's no academic credentials that would lead a job pivot, if you will, or career pivot. And so I just feel like that it's more of, just, you've got to be creative. Let me say this, Eddie. I was just thinking about this as I was processing your question. How many people have you heard in corporate America saying the same thing? I'm tired of corporate America. I don't trust corporate America. Whatever it is, I'm going to change and I'm going to teach, or I'm going to do something different. I don't think this is unique to higher ed, and I don't think it's unique to corporate America. I think it's just people. I think all of us go through cycles, and I think as we grow and change in our careers and we pivot, I think that leaves room for new seasons and new skills that we collect along the way that allow us to do different things. One of the things that I'm very proud of about my own background is that I've never been a one-trick pony. I've always had sort of two things that I was really passionate about. One is higher education, and that's teaching and student success and helping students get to college and understanding the importance of academic credentials and how they lead from that college to career process. But the other side of that is corporate America. I love helping people make that leap from college to career, finding that first job, or helping small companies grow. And I just feel like that by being able to do those two things, for me, it has led me to a very rewarding career that I've been able to withstand some tough economic times when I was hot and heavy in corporate America with my recruiting business. And, maybe there was an economic dip. I could teach part-time. I would pick up more classes adjunct or do things to sort of float me along until things got better. And so those are just some thoughts that I have around that. I don't know. Again, maybe I'm circling the wagon here with your question, but I just don't think that that's unique to higher ed. I think we have to be in a place where we understand that careers are going to ebb and flow. So are businesses. And colleges are businesses, Eddie. You and I both know this, right? They function just like a business. The thing that's unique about them is they are their own industry. But again, that's not unique to higher ed. It's like that everywhere.
Yeah. So when you have done some recruiting work for colleges and universities and thinking about colleges and universities really needing to establish credible employer brands, what are some of the mistakes that you have seen colleges and universities make in their approaches to talent attraction?
The number one mistake that I believe that colleges and universities make in regards to recruitment and branding is they leave it up to the departments. So in most academic institutions, particularly on the side of recruiting faculty, the departments run their own show. Big mistake. First of all, most traditional academics, that's all they do. I mean, they're in a bubble. They're researchers. They're not recruiters. Everybody has something that they're great at, right? And these are not people that have the knack of going out and selling something. Recruitment is sales. It's connection. It's, let me tell you why I think this is great. And not everybody's suited to do that for a living. I think about my own experience with my job at University of Texas at Arlington. I did not once talk to anybody in recruiting for the university. Not once. Well, actually, the knowledge of the opening came through somebody that I knew, like this position is open. And, I taught adjunct and that sort of thing. So again, I had the connections and I was interested and I thought, why not? But leaving it to the departments, let them be great at what they're great at, right?
Yeah.
People that are great at recruiting are great at recruiting. As much as I love bringing people into recruiting because I think it's such a fun career and it's a career of service, which is something that's always been a value of mine. The thing that I know for sure is not everybody's meant to be a recruiter and not everybody's good at that. Not everybody can connect with someone in that way or sell that opportunity. And so that's a thing. I mean, you need an HR function that is dedicated to recruitment, people that are knowledgeable about the recruiting industry, not just higher ed, but how do you recruit? How does it work? What do people want to know? Over my career, and I live in Dallas, Texas. When I've recruited for clients here in my hometown, I've brought in, I've had to bring in people from other places, and I needed to be able to talk to them about why living in Dallas or the surrounding areas is a great thing. And if you think about it, most people can't answer that question. Maybe, I like it. My family lives here. No, this is a sales thing that we're doing. We're trying to achieve somebody coming here, changing their life, especially if they're relocating from another institution. Why would they choose my institution over another one? So that's the biggest mistake. I think also the lack of targeted outreach. Colleges and universities are the pinnacle of post and pray. And, they're going to say, well, we have all of these laws that we have to abide by. Yeah, so does everybody else. But by not focusing on how can we get the word out, this is where marketing comes into play. This is where credible recruiters come into play. Listen, I was an entry-level recruiter one time too. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. But when you are recruiting faculty for a university, you need somebody that understands higher education and academia, but you need somebody that knows how to sell because the jobs are out there. It's like any other industry. Once you get experience and you get into that market, they're fighting over you. There's very few people that hold doctoral degrees, especially people of color. I know for my own journey, that was something I wanted to do as a Latina. I wanted to obtain my doctoral degree. And my ultimate goal was down the road sometime I want to teach full time and do my recruiting business part time. That was my goal. And it took me a long time to do it. I just did 2 classes here, 1 there, until I finished. But, just I know the industry, even though I'm a new full-time teacher, I know this industry. I know the people that are successful, and I know the faculty members that need to be researching. They don't ever need to be talking to students. And so that's another thing. And I think just, again, like making sure that there's representation in the recruitment process. And so when you're bringing on these panels of interviews, you need people that have different perspectives, whether that's a male-female mix, different racial and ethnic groups, different levels of experience, maybe some more junior teachers versus teachers that are maybe trending toward the end of their career, because I think everybody has a different perspective. And so just making sure that there's a variety of voices there, because I can tell you, I'm so excited about my new job. I'm so excited because this group of people that I'm going to be working with, they are diverse. Their students are diverse. There's proximity to industry here in Dallas-Fort Worth. And these are all reasons that I want to be there. And it's funny because I think going through that process, since I'm, a professional recruiter, I was looking at them saying, how are they doing? Why would I want to work? Like I was checking them out. Right. And, I think they did okay with what they have, but I think collectively, as our institution continues to grow and as my business continues to grow in that space for other companies and institutions that I've worked with, you've got to have diverse perspectives, and you just, you got to leave it to the recruiters to get out there and do the fishing, and then leave it to the departments to seal the deal.
How, this makes me think about the search committee.
Yeah.
And how can someone with recruitment experience, or at least someone who at least thinks like a recruiter, how can they have some influence when it comes to search committees? Because I can think of a couple of search committees that I've sat on. One search committee in particular, I remember that they were about to make a really bad choice. And I was sitting there, and this was even before I was a recruiter. And I remember sitting there just thinking to myself, it's common sense that this is not the person you want.
Yeah.
But there were all these biases that were so present in the conversation. And those biases were just guiding the group's conversation in a really bad and unproductive direction. And they found out that the candidate who they wanted to make the offer to wasn't even eligible for the position for some crazy reason. And so how can people who at least think like recruiters, or people who can at least pull these diverse voices together, how can they have some kind of influence in these processes? Because colleges and universities are so siloed that there's a search committee going for a really important position, and folks don't even know it's happening, except for maybe it's stuck somewhere in HR, and HR isn't telling anybody what's going on. Hey, it's Eddie Francis. Element 451 is hosting the AI Engage Summit on October 29th and 30th. This free virtual event features many of your favorite Enrollify creators and will explore AI's impact on student engagement, enrollment marketing, and institutional success. Learn to tap into AI to automate personalized outreach, improve your emails, streamline content creation, and boost campaign performance. Plus, hear directly from current students on how AI is influencing their engagement and campus life. As a matter of fact, that's a session that I'm moderating. Current student panel Perspectives on AI is going to be October 30th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. The AI Engage Summit is your guide to understanding and applying AI at your school. Registration is free. Visit element451.com to save your spot today. Now, back to the show. So how can that influence? How can that happen?
Yeah, I think that's HR's job. I think HR has to advocate for their own. As you know, talent is a function of human resources, just like comp or benefits or whatever. Like TA is a function. And I think that the culture in higher ed has always been leave it to the department. And again, per the question, what do I think the biggest challenge is? I think there's a disconnect there. And maybe I'm still early in my full-time teaching experience to say this, but I just think they really need, all colleges and universities collectively really need to do a better job of, when they bring in faculty, determining who's going to be your dedicated researchers and who are going to be your dedicated student-facing, campus-living faculty. UTA has this right. This is something that drew me like hard to UTA. I was like, this is so cool. You mean I don't have to like research my whole, and like, I want to teach. I want to work with students. I want to be on campus and help these first generation students that don't know how to make college work for them. I want to show them how this can be a life-changing decision. And so I say all that to say, when you're in HR, you've got to advocate for your job is to handle the business of all of the employees that work there and who will work there. And part of that is having leaders in human resources that are going to advocate for a more comprehensive talent acquisition approach. Yes, I mean, I don't know, like, again, maybe I'm just not knowledgeable deep enough yet to understand why they are doing everything in silos, as you say. It doesn't work. It just doesn't work. And I think they need to know, who do we need on this campus, right? If you think about corporate organizations who recruit, one of the things that they think about as they plan their search strategy is they think about who needs to be here. Who are we missing? What do we need? Colleges aren't great about doing that. All they seem to be thinking about is who is qualified on paper to teach this class. Their focus is so narrow. And as somebody who has been a student all of her adult life, off and on, as well as somebody who has taught for the last almost 15 years, part-time and now moving into a full-time role, there has to be an intersection of academic credibility and experience. Culture, college culture. Part of the value of college culture is the experience, because Eddie, you and I can take a book and read it and regurgitate that. I can take quizzes all day long. I need more than that. If I'm going to invest my money and my time into this, I need more. And so I think universities and colleges, when they're recruiting, it's so important that they know what they need. That's getting to know who's there. And I don't know, maybe their thought process is, well, this is just so big. Like, find a way to make it work. You've got to know what you need as a leader and as an HR function. So the department that I'll actually be teaching in, as you mentioned earlier when you introduced me, is the College of Business. And I'll specifically be teaching in the management program. And housed underneath the management program is human resources. So I will be teaching human resources classes. So these are going to be like human resources seminars, recruiting classes, diversity in organizations, anything that has to do with HR. And I think my job is to prepare my students, whether they work in higher ed or corporate careers, if they are going to be in an HR function, to respect talent acquisition for the important role that it is. We just have to have a broader scope of what is our path to finding the person, because here's the thing. Someone that's going to teach at UT Arlington may not be as successful at TCU or SMU. There's different kinds of students there, right?
Or even UT Austin.
Right. Exactly. So it's understanding the market, it's understanding your own organization and thinking, how do we bring what we, UTA, needs here? That is what's most important. And it's that way for every single school.
You're listening to I Want to Work There. I'm Eddie Francis, and we're talking to Lesley Regalado. She is the founder and principal consultant of Career Resource Services. It is a recruitment firm, and also she's an associate clinical professor at the College of Business at the University of Texas at Arlington. And so let's take a look at institutions that may not be as well resourced, and they are in a talent crunch. They need to make sure that they position themselves well as a place to work, especially those that are taking some big budget hits. what do you see as viable options for them to recruit in a pretty thoughtful way, but on a tight budget? How can they pull it off?
So I do think it's important that colleges and universities have recruitment functions inside of the business. I'm not saying they need 100 people, but you need some kind of a presence if you want people to take recruiting seriously. Maybe that person, if a budget's an issue, maybe you do take a more junior HR professional or somebody that wants to do a rotation into talent acquisition that knows the culture and need of the university, someone that can speak well on why somebody would want to work there. Like, why do I want to work here? And I just feel like that's an important thing. And then maybe what you do is you find a consultant, maybe like what I do, someone that has a small business, but that's an expert in your industry, particularly in talent acquisition for colleges and universities. And there are some. I am one of those people. And many times I'm willing to do, maybe a flat fee. I don't have a lot of overhead as a business. I'm not a huge organization that has, hundreds of employees. I'm a small firm that ebbs and flows through adding and subtracting consultants based on projects, as you know. And many times I'm willing to sacrifice to help an organization, whether it's a nonprofit. I do work with nonprofits sometimes, and I'll do a flat fee for them. Again, you can do a monthly fee. Maybe you need somebody hey, I need somebody to work 20 hours a week identifying talent and then handing that person off to the, corporate department. It's out there. That's what I do. And so I think those are some great ways. I think there's just this perception that talent acquisition the cost is so astronomical. And yes, I want to be compensated for my knowledge, my competency in my industry. But I also care very deeply about higher education and want to see the right people in the right jobs because, students' lives are hanging in the balance and they're counting on us to find the right faculty and staff to work in these institutions that will impact not only that 4 years of college or whatever they stretch it to be, but that will be that foundation of mentorship and college to career coaching and connections and internships and things that will launch them into what their career will look at post-college.
I had a conversation once with an administrator and they were having a problem filling some pretty important positions, actually director level positions, a couple of executive director level positions. And I said, okay, listen, this is what you do. You find a freelance recruiter. You find somebody who's not going to hit you for a lot of money, but they have the resources. They have subscriptions, that they can utilize to go out and find the people. And most of all, and best of all, they have the time that you don't have to dedicate to just looking at candidates all day long.
Right.
And so this is what you do. So I laid out this game plan and the administrator looked at me and said, no, we just need people to go and call their friends. And I was like, yeah, that's kind of why you're in a pickle you're in right now. Because you've had people calling friends the whole time. And friends can be great, but friends can also, as you and I know, friends can also be a big problem when you have friends hiring friends. And that's really interesting that for you, it really is a matter of being resourceful, and resourcefulness sometimes looks like going out and just getting a freelance recruiter that's not going to be as expensive as people may think that person is going to be. But I think what people often miss is they often miss how much time that person can dedicate to something that they simply don't have the time to do.
Right.
And so I think that winds up being a big win for a lot of folks if they just think about it. So
if you think about it, a lot of organizations, they're just flying so fast and high and all of this. They may not have the right resources in place, meaning people like me, to do these kinds of things. I think that's my responsibility to try to get in front of people and to let people know what I do for a living. But, talent acquisition is a very important role. And I think you've just got to find professionals that are, subject matter experts in recruitment and higher ed exclusively. To me, it's just so much deeper than just casting a wide net. Like, yes, you have to cast a wide net. And it really is about doing multiple strategies because even though we joke about post and pray, we should always post and pray. I always call that recruiting 101. So we do that. We network We ask for referrals. There's this plethora of things that we can do to go find talent. And you need somebody that's going to just do that over and again. It's a time consuming thing. That's the thing about recruiting is it's just time consuming. But you've just got to uncover every stone and, try to fish in the right ponds. I mean, that's really what this is about.
I always like to ask my guests about the way forward for institutions so that they can position themselves as employers of choice. So do you have an example by any chance of an institution that made you feel confident about their direction within maybe just say the first 5 minutes of conversation? You're sitting there thinking, okay, they got it. They understand. If not, what would you like to hear within the first 5 minutes of talking to an institution about their recruitment plan?
I think the most important thing is to know what their goals are. What kind of students are going to be served through this institution? I need to know what your personality is. Like what makes you different from, again, I live in DFW. This is the Mecca. North Texas is the Mecca of higher education. There's so many colleges and universities here. So it's a great place to live if you work in this industry. But each of the colleges here in our region have a unique personality. So I want to know, what is it about your institution? Again, for me, with my new job at the University of Texas at Arlington, there are very unique things that stand out to me about that institution. And the more I got to know, the more I wanted to work there. First of all, it's a Hispanic serving institution. Where else do I want to work? Nowhere. I want to be where there are kids and students, even adult learners, that can look at me and say, if she can do it, I can do it, simply by being who I am. That's very important to me. I'm very compassionate about first generation students, regardless of their background, because so many times you can get them in the door, but can you keep them, right? Yeah. So I want to know these types of things about the institution when they're recruiting. I want to understand, what is the difference that you as an institution can bring to me as a potential employee? Again, there's 10 colleges within a driving distance from my home. Why would I want to work there versus somewhere else? And many times it's just the right time, the right opportunity. It just over time it happens. But personality is so important. You and I worked on recruiting projects together where we've said, okay, for this client, they'll take this. Whereas if you're recruiting the exact same thing over here, oh, that's not going to work over there, right? Yeah. You've got to learn that personality and what makes them unique. So for me, my desire to work in higher ed has always been due to the fact that I feel like that this is a season in someone's life, regardless of when they go to college, that is going to be life-changing, not only for them, but for every single person whose life they touch and all family members that come behind them. This has to go right. You need people in these roles who are going to be passionate about education and passionate about their subject that they teach and passionate about talking to young people or maybe adults that got a later start that just need encouragement. I mean, that's the grounds that I always wanted to work on. And I feel like at this point in my career, I bring a lot. So again, for me, as somebody who's owned a small business for 27 years, I'm kind of on that back half of my career. I was really in this season where I'm like, okay, I bring all of this knowledge. And I feel like for me as a job seeker this time, rather than the recruiter, I was the job seeker. What's important to me? Number one, I wanted to work for a school that wants me. Eddie, I have all these connections of different schools in my life. I've adjuncted at 5 different colleges throughout my career. I'm currently the board of directors for the Pioneer Alumni Association for Texas Women's University, our alumni association. Again, I have all these connections, but do you know UTA came after me and said, we want you to work here. And let me tell you why. And again, it was inside of the department. And I just think to myself, if they had had the right talent partner to complement the broader knowledge, man, that would have been phenomenal. I mean, it went pretty well, but I don't know. as the job seeker, there's something about being wanted. We want you here. And I think recruiters really do, if they're good recruiters, they know how to make people feel that way. They know how to make those connections, and they know how to tap into those professional desires that people have to do meaningful work. And for me, that's really what it was. And so again, even though in my particular experience, I was recruited by the department who knew a little bit about me, and all of that happened, Eddie, I want to say this because I spoke as a consultant. I spoke at an event at the University of Texas at Arlington, and someone who works at the university saw me speak there and approached me and said, "Have you ever thought about teaching?" I said, "Oh, I do teach. I'm an adjunct professor at a couple schools, and here's my background, and I have a doctoral degree," and it just spiraled. And so I think this is a great example of networking, of being wanted, of the right time, the right place. And I think for me, knowing I wanted this kind of a job, you've got to go out there. This is my advice to the job seeker. If you want to work in higher ed, you've got to get involved. You've got to go on campus. You've got to meet people. You've got to find ways to volunteer. They need you, and you never, ever know what it's going to turn into.
Dr. Lesley Regalado, my good friend. She is the founder and principal consultant of Career Resource Services. She's also an associate clinical professor at the College of Business at the University of Texas at Arlington. Les, if anybody wanted to find out more about you, get in touch with you, how can they find out more about you?
Well, you can always find me on LinkedIn. That's my second home, right? I'm always on LinkedIn. and you can type in my name. My name is spelled Lesley, and my last name is Regalado. You can find me there, more about my business, CRS, and about the work that I do at the University of Texas at Arlington.
All right. And we got all your information in the show notes. Lesley, thank you so much for joining me on I Want to Work There.
Thank you, Eddie.
I Want to Work There is part of the Enrollify Podcast Network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our shows help higher ed marketers and admissions professionals find their next big idea and feature a selection of the industry's best as your hosts. Learn from Jamie Hunt, Mallory Wilsey, Seth Odell, Dave Kibbles, Jenny Lee Fowler, and so many other of your favorite leaders in higher ed. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered all-in-one student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.